This is the second part of our investigation into wind power. When wind power can affect us so negatively and leads to such a major encroachment on nature, one has to ask whether wind power is quite as environmentally friendly as its proponents claim.
Why is wind power not environmentally sound?
First, you have to realize that it's not just a wind turbine, right? The wind turbine is just, it's like a mushroom. It's only the bit that you see above the ground. There is an entire network underground. Cabling, foundations, roads, drainage, substations, etc., just on the site. Then don't forget that these things have to be connected. Work of pylons and cables, etc., that connect. So first of all, we have to realize it's not just this thing that spins around. It's an entire industrial complex. Then you look at the supply chain, like a mushroom. It's much bigger than what you actually see. And then you go to the supply chain, which goes to China, and it goes to Africa, and it goes to South America, where they have massive mines, where they're just destroying, just massively destroying nature. So the building process is absolutely devastating. Deforestation, killing animals, etc., displacing people. And when it operates, it's making noise. It's killing birds. It's visually impacting a natural environment. It's destabilizing the electricity grid because, you cannot turn a wind turbine on and off. If the wind doesn't blow at the right time, then it causes all kinds of problems. There are so many additional impacts that are conveniently ignored. So we also have to realize that it's creating an entire world of waste. Waste electrical equipment. The turbines are waste after 20 years anyway. And actually, these very big ones, they need repairs and maintenance all the time. They're swapping gearboxes, oil. Sometimes the blades have to be replaced. So what they tell you is a lie. They say this thing right here is great. But they don't tell you everything that goes with it.
A lie. That's how the praise for wind power has just been described. Such praise came as recently as September 2021, when party leader Per Bolund once again lavished praise on wind power. But there is another side, which argues that wind power doesn't save the environment at all. We'll begin first with what was utilized to start such an enormous upheaval: carbon dioxide.
Jag började debattera vindkraft 2008. Då vi blev drabbade i våran by. Vi hade ju ett utsläppsfritt system. Och då är det ju svårt att sänka det. Oavsett vad du stoppar in för alternativ. Och om man tittar på en livscykelanalys så har ju vindkraft faktiskt större utsläpp än kärnkraft. Ungefär 3 gånger så stora. I ett svenskt perspektiv så är det ju fullständigt vansinnigt.
Med att lära mig vindkraft ända sedan 2002-2003. Det är ju en blåsning utav... Man räddar ingen miljö genom att producera allting som man behöver för vindkraft. Man räddar inte heller någonting när det gäller Sveriges koldioxidutsläpp. Man kan bara titta på Vattenfalls livscykelanalyser där vindkraften tror jag hamnar på 3:e plats.
Annually by the state-owned Vattenfall, in everything from fuel production, construction, operation and maintenance to residue management and final dismantling. The bottom line year after year is that wind power actually results in higher carbon dioxide emissions than, say, nuclear power, about 3 times as much in fact. Wind power actually causes more pollution, in terms of acidifying substances and hydrocarbons too, which form ground-level ozone, according to figures from the US Energy Information Administration.
Professor emeritus i energi och miljö. Jag kan inte se att vindkraften är miljömässigt hållbar om utsläpp av så kallade klimatgaser, då i huvudsak, så orsakar vindkraft 3 gånger så höga koldioxidutsläpp. Systemnivå är det säkert det dubbla. Då ska man räkna in utsläppen som blir från en enorm utbyggnad av balanskraft, annan reglerkraft eller lagring och så vidare. Så att någonstans typ 5-6 gånger så stor.
Spokesperson of the Sweden Democrats. He points out that the closure of fully functioning nuclear power stations and the expansion of wind power hasn't reduced carbon emissions at all.
Dimensionerat in vindkraft under nästan 2 decennier och vi har ju lika hög fossil andel i vår elmix idag som vi hade då. Det har ju inte hänt någonting. Det enda som har hänt det är ju att man då har slagit ut fullt fungerande kärnkraft som på intet sätt har minskat utsläppen av växthusgaser i Sverige. Man låser sig ju väldigt mycket vid den här visionen om att det ska vara 100% förnybart, men betong är inte förnybart, det är inte förnybart med den stål eller den koppar som behövs heller, och det är därför som det ger högre utsläpp per producerad energienhet.
Wind power is in remarkably bad shape, but the problems with wind power do not end there. Another topic is the issue of microplastics.
Det som kanske inte har debatterats lika mycket, det är väl de uppgifter vi börjar se vad handlar om till exempel spridning av mikroplaster som sprids i våra skogar från vindkraftverk eller med spridning av bisfenol. Det är ju någonting som man måste väga sammantaget och inte bara titta på en isolerad faktor.
Now is footage of the fabrication process of a wind turbine's blades. Lots of chemicals are used. Plastics from oil, of course, and composite material. Industry thought would be maintenance-free, but that turned out to be wrong. Instead, erosion is routinely detected on the blades. This requires maintenance, repairs, and the replacement of blades, oil, and engines.
The lift that goes right the way down the blade, so it can have a huge impact on performance of the blade.
Believe it or not, when engineers first installed wind turbines, they thought they'd be pretty much maintenance-free. But they were wrong.
Erosion not only causes problems for airflow, while degrading a turbine's performance. The material also has to end up somewhere. Here is one of Vestas's wind turbine blades. It requires replacement after losing so much mass due to both weather and wind.
In order to change a blade on a wind turbine at sea, we have to, of course, remove a damaged blade and make ready to put a new blade on. Now, in this case, we have a blade that's going to be replaced that has lost a lot of mass.
That exists. They simply did not want the public to know. According to a report from June 2021, the lifetime of a turbine blade's coating is only just over 4 years for wind power installations on land. Affected by salt water and strong winds, that of an offshore blade is just over a single year. As we can see, components are constantly being replaced, from gearboxes every 5 years to rotor blades every 7 years, as if the industry's claim of a life expectancy of 25 years is remotely correct. Blades can be affected by significant erosion after a few years, unquote, and they conclude, quote, this is a serious problem because the claimed lifespan is said to be 25 years. An erosion, but exactly how much? Power industries say it's negligible. Calculated just how much microplastics are emitted, basing their own study on a British report from 2021. The authors estimate that a wind power turbine under Norwegian conditions emits something in the order of 62 kilograms of microplastics per turbine. This corresponds to 272 tons of microplastics every year, as Sweden has well over 4,400 wind turbines. Plastics from wind turbines have never been investigated by any authority. This is the fact that worn-out rotor blades are a major problem. The ground, as can be seen here. Built to withstand gale force winds, they cannot easily be crushed or reused. The wind turbine blades will be there forever. Adona, CEO of Veolia's Environments North America.
For the next several decades, tens of thousands of these giant structures will be retired.
Now requires something which many people don't ever think about. And this creates a whole new batch of environmental problems.
Samma problematik som kärnkraften har med till exempel använt kärnbränsle eller att det finns en radioaktiv påverkan. Det finns ju även från vindkraften när det handlar om de permanentmagneter som behövs i generatorerna och de sällsynta metaller som man uteslutande nästan då bryter i Kina eller diktaturer. Problemen kopplat till det debatteras nog inte så mycket som de borde göra.
Vindkraften mer än 10 gånger så mycket icke-förnybara material per kilowattimme som kärnkraften gör.
Det finns en del ämnen som kallas för sällsynta jordartsmetaller.
De här jordartsmetallerna till vindkraft släpper ut mer radioaktivitet än vad vårt kärnavfall producerar.
Se effekterna av brytning av neodym eller sällsynta jordartsmetaller, så finns det ett område i Kina som heter Baotou.
而处理过稀土的废水，还有众多化学有毒物质和放射物质。 这些物质会引发胰腺癌、肺癌和血癌。而现在那里方圆10里散发着刺鼻的气味。
Och det sprids över jordbruk och landområden och skog. Så att folk kan inte leva på de markerna. Man kallar dem för cancer towns därför att du har väldigt låg livslängd. Många av de här är hemliga.
Neodym är en väldigt sällsynt metall till exempel, som är en av de här ämnena.
Vi vet inte hur länge de räcker eller om Kina börjar att använda dem geopolitiskt, vilket de redan gör med USA i det här handelskriget.
Den metallen, utan den hade vi inte haft en grön revolution. Det är det som har gjort våra motorer effektiva. Men neodym finns bara i en x antal ton.
Det går överallt i vindkraftverk och elsystem.
All koppar som vi har grävt upp hittills som människor genom historien. Vi ska gräva upp lika mycket som vi har gjort genom hela historien kommande 30 år. Det kommer ju bli enorma koppargruvor för att få upp all koppar bara för att...
Så det är ju en mycket högre kostnad. Speciellt då i länder som då har miljölagar som ska följas.
Totalt sett så kommer vi ju 40-50-faldiga brytningen av allt.
Det är väldigt mycket stål som ska till för fundament och tornen och de här motorhusen. Fossilsamhälle till ett stålsamhälle, eller ett metallsamhälle.
Som helst kommer vi gå från en fossilålder till en gruvålder.
Makes the very same warning. Namely, the enormous resource claims that a so-called fossil-free society, just to meet Britain's transition to electric cars, for example. Enormous, truly vast resources are... They write that it would alone require 2 times the entire world's annual production of cobalt, 1 year's worth of the globe's production of neodymium, 75% of the world's lithium production, and 12% of its annual copper production. Just for electric cars, and solely for Britain's needs. Imagine what this would inevitably mean if every other country did the same. Production would have to increase by 20%, of course, were cars to be charged too. Were wind power to supply the world's electric car fleet with energy, that's the rough equivalent of 2 billion vehicles. This would require yet another entire year of world copper production, and 10 years' worth of its neodymium production, and a decade's worth of its mined dysprosium too, to build all the needed wind turbines. The German newspaper Der Spiegel mentions similar figures, with a medium-sized wind turbine requiring as much as 67 tons of copper alone, and to extract that, 50,000 tons of soil and rock needs to be quarried. The ore must then be crushed, ground, watered, and bleached. Quite a lot of nature simply has to be destroyed just for a little bit of wind power. Here is a calculation of the demand for raw materials for the so-called green transition. In other words, quite enormous resources are required alongside a massive expansion in mining, something already described as the most destructive industry for the environment that exists.
Så sorgligt att man hela tiden kallar den för förnybar, hållbar, när det i själva verket inte finns en enda del på vindkraftverket som är förnybar. Ingenting av det de säljer in med är sant.
The impact of wind power on both birds and bats. The Swedish Environmental Protection Agency states a figure of 5 to 10 dead birds per year per wind turbine. That would amount to 22,000 to 44,000 killed per year. The industry doesn't think the number is a high one when compared to birds killed by...
Funnet fra perioden bare i det vindkraftverket. Det är ganska drömt anpassats för det, så den kan inte beräkna att den här kommer komma tillbaks. Bildar ju liksom en barriär i landskapet som många fåglar undviker också. Adderas för varje vindkraftspark man bygger, fragmenterar och skapar barriärer i landskapet för fåglar. En död på bordet, då får vi offra det för att vi gör en så stor, bra miljöinsats eller så. Retoriken...
The agency admits that, quote, wind power is a greater problem than we thought 5 years ago and be dying out from the pressure differences caused by the rotor blades, so-called barotrauma, that bursts their lung. This was part 2 of our 3-part series on wind power. In part 1, we heard testimony about how wind power affects individuals, their health, housing, and businesses. This part has shown the negative consequences of wind power which are rarely, if ever, addressed. The electrical system. What does wind power add exactly? How is wind power remotely economically viable? How does it in fact affect the stability of the entire national electricity grid? Can people and businesses be guaranteed the electricity they need, in other words, and when they need it? Who pays for, and who chiefly benefits from, this expansion in wind power? This and more will be addressed in part 3.